Welcome back to another Wednesday on the Pagan Perspective. I'm your Wednesday host, Yeka, and this week we've been talking about a very interesting topic that can go in a lot of different directions. So it's quite involved. I'm going to go ahead and post the full text in the description box so you can go ahead and read that if you're interested in the full amount. But basically, the seed of it this week was a viewer talking about an experience they had in a group, I believe it was a Facebook group for witches, and one of the members, who was not themselves, wrote in asking for suggestions on a love spell to make the man that she was in love with fall back in love with her. And they expressed, and other members did as well, that they thought that that was wrong, and there was some arguments and fights about that, and seems like they did not feel good about the way they were treated in response. So they wanted to know about our take on that, and just to kind of go with that. So I first wanted to say that, having not participated in this conversation, not knowing anybody involved, it's very hard to speak to it. But based on the information given, I would think that the woman asking for suggestions for this love spell might have a very common confusion, misperception on the difference between love and obsession. And a lot of our media doesn't help in distinguishing those two concepts as being different things. Personally, I believe that what we often see portrayed and called love in many of our pop songs and our movies and things like that really are obsession. They're not actually love. Personally, I think that if you really loved the person, then you wouldn't want to make them, trick them, force them, violate their free will in returning that towards you. And I would be very concerned if that, for the well-being of that relationship, if that was what it was based on. Now, I have to say that this is where I'm coming from. That doesn't fit my personal morality. But I understand that other people may not share that. And so I think, at least in the way that I approach the world, it's very important to approach conversations understanding that my view, or a specific view, is not truth with a capital T. It is, even if it is what I believe, it's not universally shared. So I think this is a great opportunity to talk about how we communicate when we are in conflict with each other. I believe that the way that we speak, the word choices that we make, has a huge impact on what we believe, the way that we see the world, and the way that we feel about it, and also the way that the world and other people respond in turn to us. Although, as we've talked about a lot on this channel before, we really don't have control over what someone else is going to do, and even if we do use language which is a constructive language, which is non-violent, there's still the opportunity for them to respond however they were going to respond. They may not respond in the way, return your I statements with I statements. It's very likely that they may return your I statements with you statements. And that's not something that we have control over, but it does. But when we use nonviolent communication, when we use respectful communication that acknowledges their intellectual, their emotional autonomy, the way that we feel, the way that we respond to the world, the way that we think about the world is influenced and impacted. So let me give some concrete examples of what I'm saying, or a little bit, some actual words. So instead of, specifically in a disagreement, not saying, you hurt my feelings, your words are wrong, you, that is bad. Approaching it from something more like, my values are XYZ, and from that place, I believe XYZ. When you say that, I feel whatever in response, using the language that is not blaming, and is not putting words, not putting arguments or putting feelings in their mouth or in their heads and feelings, and not being arrogant enough to think that you really do know what they mean or what their argument is. That can go a long, long way in keeping it open. First of all, especially when it is a tense situation, something that you really have different beliefs and views on, and helping keep open the possibility that some real communication can happen, instead of just people clinching down on whatever their position was, and possibly not hearing what you're saying, and you are creating a greater possibility, choosing your words carefully in a way like that to keep yourself open to what they're saying, because there's a good chance that what they're saying isn't what you immediately think they might be saying. So some of these ideas that I'm talking about are very much influenced by nonviolent communication, by respectful communication. You might have heard some of this referred to I feel statements or I statements, and I think that there's a lot of power in that. There's some things to watch out for. There are fake I feel statements. When somebody says, I feel like you're not listening, that's not actually an I statement or an I feel statement, because what's actually being said there, that's a thought, not a feeling. That's an interpretation. And we often use feel and think interchangeably, but they're actually conceptually different. So feeling is an actual emotion or sensation, and in that case, I feel like you're not listening, or I feel like you don't care, something like that. That is your interpretation of the response that you saw. So I feel upset when I believe I'm not being heard, when I think I'm not being heard. When you turn your back on me in the middle of a conversation, I feel upset because I think you're not listening. Words like that, reframing it, can be really powerful. So, going back to the original topic, I'm certainly not saying that anybody did something wrong or bad or anything like that. I wasn't there. That's just kind of what came up for me, was thinking about the power that we have in the way that we choose to communicate, and those words really show the respect that we have for others and for ourselves when we choose to argue, or to have disagreements in a way that's respectful. And we talk a lot about respectful arguments, or respectful disagreement. What is that? What I've just shared with you is a piece of what I think that is. So I think that's what I've got for this week. I could probably keep going on it, but I'm going to close it there. And next week, and then coming back in April, we've got quite a few kind of very interesting spring topics. Happy spring, by the way. So I look forward to sharing those with you, and until next time.